If you're a Cleveland Browns fan looking for a break from the emotional roller coaster that is the price we pay from loving then hating our Browns, then a big welcome to Cleveland Browns Anonymous, a group therapy podcast to help you survive the season. So let's start our meeting.
Hi, everybody. This is Mike Riley on a gloomy, cold Monday fall after another Browns loss. And with me, my longtime suffering colleague on this podcast, Brooke Riley. How are you, Brooke?
I'm good. I'm cold.
Okay, well, Cavs
Made
are
a
on a
fire
losing...
last night, so that was nice.
Yeah, well, Cavs are on a losing streak, so it's a double. We're doubly depressed today. But I have to say, I'm getting a little bit more acclimated to losing with the Browns. So they're not as shocking as they were, earlier in the season. I was at peace with myself once again watching the game yesterday because the Browns smartly marched down the field, scored a touchdown. And then I watched the kickoff, and I saw the Dolphins just slice and dice through the Browns like soft butter. And I knew this game was not going to go well. You just know right away when the Browns defense is confused and surprised and, running around in circles. So I know you did not watch the game. How's that for a podcast expert, Brooke?
Well, I know I told you that this morning. I watched a couple plays in the first half, and then felt like I'd rather take my dogs for a walk than watch.
I watched through videotape playing, the game, and it was pathetic. It's just more of the same. And I think for this podcast, I want to refer to start with a couple of quotes. One was from Myles Garrett, where he said something to the effect of, running through brick walls is not going to win football games. And Terry Pluto, who writes for Cleveland.com, was a little confused by that remark. I wasn't confused at all because the players have been cryptically saying that all year, even last year after the pacing that the Patriots, led by rookie quarterback Mac Jones, laid on the Browns defense, where literally players were colliding into each other on end runs. Myles was just visibly upset at the lack of preparation. So, we're basically, it's just like deja vu all over again, as Yogi Berra would say. But I want to just tell listeners that they should pick up. I highly recommend reading this book by the late, great David Halberstam, who's wrote some incredible sports books, along with his legendary Pulitzer Prize winning Best and the Brightest, which came out in the early 70s, the book on Vietnam. Halberstam has always been, whether he's covering media, politics, war, or sports, he has a laser ability to understand that what makes people tick. And he wrote a book called The Education of a Coach, which was the biography of Bill Belichick. And folks, all you've got to do is read the front end of the book. When young Belichick was hired as a assistant to the assistant to the assistant for the Baltimore Colts when they were still in Baltimore. Ted Marchibroda was the coach. Marchibroda was friends with Belichick's dad, and he gave this young man a job breaking down film. That was Belichick's first entree job into the NFL. And I'm almost done with this story, but I keep thinking about that because Belichick would break down the film, and then we'd go out and we'd had individual conversations with the defensive players. And he would talk to them. He would say, the guy you're going up against, when he leans a little forward on his on his fists, that means they're going to run. If he takes the pressure off his fist, he's back on his heels, watch his heels, that's a clue that they're going to be running a pass. And Belichick, here he is in his early 20s, and players at first didn't take him seriously. They thought he was a water boy or a ball boy. But what they quickly found out after a couple of games, that this kid was giving them information that was valuable to them having success on the field, individual success on the field. So more and more throughout that first season, they started listening to Bill Belichick. And you know why? Because he was telling them what they needed to know in the upcoming games. And throughout Belichick's career, the constant refrain with all his players is very simple. We always feel like we're always prepared for the game. That what they didn't surprise us. We knew what they were going to do. We were prepared for it. If a Belichick defense loses, it's only because there's more talent on the other side. Your comments, Brooke?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just way too much talent on this team. That tells me is that it goes back to the coaching. Now, whether that's Stefanski, I know it's the defensive coordinator. I know that for sure. But there's just way too much. I mean, Myles Garrett, Nick Chubb, offensive line's great. Jadeveon Clowney, Denzel Ward. I mean, I think he's good. I think that Greg Newsome is good. I think that John Johnson is good. I mean, there's just way too much talent on this team.
You got four All-Pros on the defense at one point. John Johnson, All-Pro. Denzel, All-Pro. Myles, All-Pro. And Clowney, All-Pro. There's four guys there that are All-Pro. And this team is one of the worst defenses in the league. They're giving up an average of 30 points a game. They can't stop anybody. And if the only team they stopped was Cincinnati, and that was only because they were so stupid, the Bengals, that they didn't run Mixon. If they had run Mixon, they would have won that game easily. But for some reason, they just kept throwing and running mid-level routes where they allowed the Browns to pass rush. That's it. They had two guys blocking Myles yesterday. I mean, there were two guys, and people watched the tape. They had they kept two guys in to block Myles, and the guy had all day throwing, and of course, they had him on their heels with running. The Browns were once again surprised. And this goes to coaching, period. And the head coach has got to get his head out of the sand and recognize the bigger picture, which I go back to Myles Garrett's cryptic quote that running through walls is not going to win football games, which means, translated, is, you know what? Cut the rah-rah and the cliches, Kevin Stefanski. They're falling on deaf ears, and the players are not confident going into the game. Thoughts, Brooke?
Yeah, well, I also think that it's not a good sign if Kevin Stefanski can't make the tough decision to fire a coach. I mean, he's never done this since he's been with the Browns. I mean, if he doesn't realize that his defense sucks and the coaching staff on the defensive side isn't good enough, I don't know why, called Andrew Berry and Jimmy Haslam and be like, look, I need to make some serious changes here.
Well, Andrew Berry should be seeing that. That's the GM's call. And I think what's happening is that, they're trust. Go ahead, Brooke. I'm sorry.
Yeah, these guys are smart enough where I'm fairly confident that they've talked about this. I just don't know why they haven't made that change. I mean, I knew that Bengals game was an anomaly. I was like, you know what, they're going to get smoked by the Dolphins. And I watched I watched a couple plays in the first half, walked the dogs, checked my phone. I'm like, oh, yep, Dolphins are up by 17.
Yeah, exactly. It was not a surprise. You know what? I think it's you got to ask yourself, Andrew, if you're listening to this, Kevin, are you surprised by this? This defense is constantly getting sliced and diced. Are you surprised that a third string running back on the Atlanta Falcons runs for 150 yards against your defense? Are you surprised that a third string rookie quarterback has a Hall of Fame, on the Patriots, has a Hall of Fame game against you? Joe Flacco marches down the field. I mean, when are you going to wake up and realize, and maybe what you have to do is you have to readjust your process. Maybe they are, these smart guys are so process driven. They're trusting the process too much, which is we assemble this team, let this team of coaches work together, and we'll solve this collectively. That doesn't work because you have a defensive coordinator who is not good at their job. That's it. Let's keep this real simple. He is incompetent. He's not Wade Phillips. He doesn't have a track record of success as a defensive coordinator. He was picked as a budding genius for whatever reason. I don't know how they based he was a genius. He was a secondaries coach with Robert Saleh as the defensive coordinator. And when you make that big jump from assistant defensive coordinator to the defensive coordinator, 50% of the time these guys fail. I mean, look at what happened with the Colts when they took out Frank Reich and they put in Jeff Saturday. Jeff Saturday, oh my God, he doesn't have any. Oh,
I knew they were.
He doesn't have he's not an NFL lifer. He doesn't have. It's not on his resume that he did X, Y, and Z. All the guy did was be an all-pro player and change the tone of the team. And those things, that's the X factor in success as a coach. It's hard to quantify because you have a lot of people who get promoted to head coach who just don't have that X factor. Thoughts, Brooke?
Yeah, I mean, I knew that when I just had that feeling that when the Colts made that decision that they were going to win. Not only that, but the Raiders suck. That's another head coach who McDaniels.
How does this guy get these jobs?
Well, it helps when you're with Bill Belichick.
Well, right. How do these guys get this job? These Eric Manginis, these Romeo Cornells, these Charlie. Look at, hey, Andrew Barry, you're a smart guy. Paul DePodesta, smart guys. Think outside the box. Take your analytics into another area. I'm a big believer in analytics, the way we run our business, Brooke. But analytics always need to evolve what you're looking at. Do a study. Spend $100,000. Bring in top flight headhunters and answer the fundamental question, what makes a good coach? A good coach is supposed to make their players better. Okay? With the Browns, they have good players, right? These are all pros. They're getting worse. Okay? That means we don't have a good coach. We're not overreacting. We're making this simple. So adapt the process and don't get wedded and locked into a decision which is clearly wrong.
Yeah, well, I think head coaches are also, they're supposed to make players better. They're also supposed to hold players accountable. I just think there's zero accountability on this team.
Yeah, well, Delpit got disciplined, and who's this other guy who got dressed without playing? Richard LeConte. He's another guy. They don't dress him. I mean, there's. I think one of the things. Hey, Andrew Barry, tell me I'm wrong, but if you draft a guy and that's your guy, are you just holding on to that guy, hoping they're going to turn around and justify your decision? Because Richard LeConte has not developed. And Grant Delpit, big question mark. He ain't no Ed Reed back there. And you got to wonder, John Johnson, all pro, has he been limited and people been fixated on developing some of these players that they've been drafted that clearly are not developing? And one last point, Brooke, in terms of Andrew Barry and Joe Woods. Remember how excited they were about drafting Martin Emerson? Martin Emerson is just another guy who can play secondary and linebacker. JOK, another hybrid. Grant Delpit can play up in the box. These guys are getting run over. They're so light. Does anybody want to ring that bell? And maybe there's a flaw here? I mean, look at how the Dolphins stuffed Chubb and Hunt yesterday. They had their middle linebacker, their captain, Landon, who was just stuffing these lanes. And that, at the end of the day, if you want to have a top 5 defense, you better have a Ray Lewis there.
Well, it seems that like every time we play a team that is, I'm not going to say great, but even if they're great, if they're good or they're average, they seem to always take away the Browns' strength on offense. And I feel like we have no ability to do that with the other team.
Yeah, no.
I feel like when we play the Patriots yesterday, it's going to happen when we play the Bucs. It's going to happen when we play the Bills. Our strength on offense is Nick Chubb. And, half the time I think they're successful, but our defense does not have that ability to do that. And again, that goes back to the coaching, the scheme.
Hey, let's stop here. We got to pay some bills. 30 seconds, and we'll be back. Getting your house ready to sell, or you just need some basic repairs, and you can't get anybody to come out or even return your phone call. Then call Riley Painting and Contracting, your home mechanics, for all of your home repair needs, from electrical, plumbing, roof repairs, and getting your house ready to sell. 45 years in the business, a AAA on the Better Business Bureau, and we're on the preferred contractor list in Cleveland Heights and Shaker Heights. You can contact us by calling 216-371-8160 and leave a message. And guess what? We'll call you back.
Right. They're too scheme. Again, I've said this in past podcasts, so folks, excuse me if I'm repetitive. You hit the nail on the button, or the button on the nail, or the hammer on the nail, whatever, which is scheme. Anybody who rises to the top usually has one trick they use a lot. And when they get to the top, they have to have more than one trick. They have to have a bunch of tricks. You know that old expression, one trick pony? And a lot of things, the Pat Shermers of the world, the Norv Turners, all these people, all these geniuses that crashed and burned as a head coach, they just had one trick. Even Wade Phillips was not a good head coach. Great defensive coordinator, great offensive coordinator. Brian Dable, he seems to have a bunch of tricks that he can use. Charlie Weiss, he didn't have anything. He benefited from being with Belichick. And I know I've said in an earlier podcast, I'll never forget about 5-6 years ago when the Chargers, I think head coach Steve Wilkes. If it wasn't Steve Wilkes, my apologies. But the Chargers came in. They were a hot team. They played the Patriots, and Patriots just schooled them. They let Brady do those dump off passes all game until it was 35-3. And if somebody asked the head coach, why didn't you make any adjustments? And he said very proudly, well, this is the defense we have. We just say, hey, bring it on. If you can beat it, more power to you. There's stuff. Nobody is surprised by what the Browns do. Okay? They think Miles, hey, Mary Kay, they think Miles is going to win the game for them. Okay.
I don't think he's ever won the game for us.
Miles,
I mean, he's a great player, but like he's never kind of like sealed the deal.
Right. Well, and I don't even blame Miles. Miles is a great player. But you know what? Can we just get off this sack leader stuff and this MVP stuff? That's what Russell Wilson was trying to do with Seattle. He didn't give a shit whether they won the Super Bowl. He wanted to be MVP of the league. You know what? Stop it. Stop talking about MVP. Start focusing on, and these team meetings, this rah-rah, let's run through a brick wall. Or as Bo Jackson once said about his coach at Auburn, he wants to see blood on the saddle. And Bo Jackson said, it ain't going to be my blood on the saddle. You put your blood on the saddle. These rah-rah coaches who are basically have one trick, their own little scheme. So maybe Joe Woods' scheme is based on having 5 strong safeties play as linebackers. And as a result, what you're seeing is they're just getting chewed up on the run game. They can't stop the run. They can't stop the run. And God, you know what? And the Buffalo Bills, I mean, they're already, I think, 8-point underdogs. I'd take that bet in a heartbeat. That's going to be because the Bills, they're like the Ravens. They just pile on. I mean, McDermott is pedal to the metal in terms of point. That game's going to be 35-7. Easily.
Especially them coming off that loss.
Yeah, in Buffalo, they're going to run the game. They're going to run it right down their throats, and Joe Woods just won't have an answer. And then basically the season's in the garbage can. The point is, Brooke, Deshaun Watson, really, who gives a shit whether he's there or not? If you're giving up 30-plus points a game.
Well, I think that, I always said that this season was going to be a wash, and I'm kind of glad I set those expectations at the start. I mean, I'm not surprised by a lot of this, but the one thing I am curious about is, how much Jimmy Haslam is going to take this season. Coaching staff.
Well, I know
I've said it.
I've
said it on our podcasts a lot. There's no way that he is jeopardizing $230 million fully guaranteed if he doesn't trust the coaching staff. And we know him in the past that, he lets guys go. So that's what I'm more curious about.
I think he's going to sign off on that if he gets the agreement from his guru, Paul DePodesta, and Andrew Berry. And I think these are kind of guys who are going to have a heart with Stefan. I don't think they're going to let Stefanski go, but I think Andrew Berry's got to grow a pair here.
Well,
okay?
There's no track record here, so I mean, yeah, I'm all about keeping having the same coaching staff in place like the Ravens. But at what point, do you realize, well, this hasn't been working out ever since Paul DePodesta has come here? We had that one okay season where we went to the playoffs during, the COVID year.
Right.
So
they and I've said this over and over again. Every podcast, it's like watching every Browns loss. Every podcast follows the same. I bring up the same points. Stefanski was so clueless. He kept saying Case Keenum is not good enough. Baker's better. Baker gives us a better chance of winning. he was so wrong last year. Case Keenum would have gotten us into the playoffs easily. And what happened with Joe Woods' defense has been erratic at best. But you've got to have offense. Ironically, I think, and hey, Joe, I'll give you a little bit of slack here. If we had maybe of a Deshaun Watson or a quarterback that could do more than just one trick pony, one good drive, that we could have a comeback, a real kind of gunfight, that match back and forth points on the board, Josh Allen against Patrick Mahomes. Maybe the defense wouldn't be standing out, but we went in there. Our master plan, Andrew Berry, was we're going to have a game manager quarterback and we're going to have a top 5 defense. We have a terrible defense. We know the problem. We know Brissett's not Watson. We know that. People accept that. But this is so much talent being misused on the field. And that goes to coaching. Just like Frank Reich. Frank Reich's team, terrible. All that talent on there, just terrible. And he had to go. And Irsay made the right call. So.
Well, Reich was the head coach.
Yeah, no, Frank Reich. Yeah, he was the head coach. He had to go. Bring in Saturday. Bring in somebody who's got a feel for the game, as opposed to somebody who's not just X's and O's. You think about John Madden, brought in by the legendary Al Davis. John Madden was the rookie head coach, and he was the perfect vibe for that Raider team. Perfect. Just watch go on YouTube, The Life of Al Davis and John Madden. I mean, there's Bill Parcells, perfect for the Giants. Perfect head coach for Belichick, getting into his ear, kicking him in the ass, but yet giving him cover. I mean, that was a great combination. Look at Andy Reid. He ain't calling the plays in KC. So, yeah, Andrew Berry, you can get all the talent in the world. You seem to be drafted well, I think. But if you don't have a coach who's going to be a Bill Callahan and develop these and make these players better and reach their full potential and to work as a group, then it's all for naught. I don't care how many All-Pros you get on that team if you got a bad defensive coordinator. So, final thoughts, Brooke?
Final thoughts are the defense sucks. Defense sucks. The special teams suck. The offenses, they're okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Brooke, for that.
Yes.
It's Monday. It's Monday.
Yeah.
We're just trying to survive here in this meeting. It's going to be, you know what? It's already turning into a forgettable season. And you know what? Without any changes, it's just going to be more of the same.
Yeah,
That's
the definition of insanity. I mean, I'll tell you one thing. If they trot this whole coaching staff out again next year, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
You might have lost me there, but
yeah. Well,
and
Andrew
I had a
Berry,
friend too say, I had a friend, ask me, he's kind of giving me some shit for not watching the game, and I said, you got to sit through the suffering. It's all going to be good. I was like, I've only seen this team suffer. I never saw any winning. I don't know this team anything.
Exactly. Blood
they
on the
owe
saddle.
Me all those wasted Sundays. I could have gotten so much stuff done.
Blood on the saddle. We were encouraged back in the day, just if they were putting up a fight. And players were getting developed because everybody bought into the process except Hugh Jackson, who kept trying to undercut it. But we were fine with this, that, because we kept looking at the draft picks we had, and then we got Andrew Berry and coming in, and we started drafting really good players and developing them, and it all seemed to come to fruition with Baker, and that getting the playoffs and beating Pittsburgh. And now it's just terrible. It's terrible because we've gotten a taste of winning. And we got no draft picks. Okay.
Yeah. That's the worst part.
We got no draft picks the next couple of years. It's not like we can't say we're rebuilding. We just signed all these people to big time contracts. And Andrew, it's the coaching. Get somebody like Bill Callahan on the defense. Okay? That's who we need. Get Wade Phillips out of retirement. You know? Whatever. But this is terrible. It's terrible. It's just depressing. So that's my final thought. So anyways, we will hopefully have something inspiring to say at the end of the week, but I wouldn't count on it, folks. So, Brooke, thanks for your time. Let's call it quits.
All right. That's good.
Okay. Bye.
All right. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Cleveland Browns Anonymous podcast with Mike Riley. We have a lot more content on the way as we get this new podcast started. You can also check out some of our other podcasts like the Cleveland Real Estate Investor Podcast and other new ones that will start soon. On any platform that you find yourself listening to us on, feel free to leave us a like or comment or follow us. It always helps.